Hello, this is one of a series of videos accompanying the Joomla tutorial developing an MVC component, and today we're going to be looking at adding language management. Now, in preparation for this, I've made our Helloworld site multi-language. So I've installed, as you can see here, French and Spanish. And I've added a couple of administrators. So here on my Microsoft Edge, I have got Jean, who is French, and here on Chrome, I've got Juan, who is Spanish. So in terms of other things we've done, I've made a number of articles here. And I've put a Spanish article, artículo uno in Spanish, artículo un in French. And let's go to our Spanish site. I've created a number of menus as well. So we've got an English menu, French menu, Spanish menu. And each one of those menus points to a particular menu item. And the menu item points to a particular article, and it's one of those three articles, article uno in the case of this Spanish menu item. So we've really got on our site, we've got three menus. Each menu points to a menu item, and each of those menu items points to one of these three articles. And the reason for doing all that is it enables our site to be set up so that each language has got its own home page, and in particular it allows this menu switcher to be displayed. Now, if all of this is sounding a bit strange to you, there's a really good site which is setting up a multilingual Joomla installation, and if you go through this tutorial here, it'll make a lot more sense. But what we've got at the moment is we've got a multilingual site, both in our admin side of things, and we've got a couple of administrators set up in different languages, and on our site side of things, so we can press our home key and English home goes to that first article. I press the Spanish flag, it goes to the Spanish first article, and French, it goes to French first article. So there's a lot of preparation actually setting it up to be multilingual. But for the purposes of our, adding language management into our Helloworld instance, really, that's just a bit of background. You don't need to understand it. If you do, I suggest you go through this multilingual Joomla site tutorial, which is really quite good. So that's what I've done on the site. In terms of code, what I have done is I have updated the helloworld.xml file in accordance with the page here. So I've set these sorts of names back to com hello world description, and this here, com hello world menu. And I've added these language folders. So as you can see here, I've got all of these language folders set up, but all of these language folders are currently all of these language files are currently blank, haven't got any translations in them. And then I've actually installed that version. The other thing I've done is, because we didn't have any language translation to do in the front end, this is our front end display layout, and I've just added this line here. So it shows a com hello world message. So it's got a term here which can be translated in the front end. And if I go to show goodbye world, you can see that com hello world message on the front end, which isn't translated at the moment. So say I've made those changes to the code, and I've actually installed that version, and I've called it version 8. So if we go here, this is our com hello world here, and it's version 8. So I've put that onto our Joomla instance. So let's look in more detail about translation. What sort of things can be translated? Well, that's fairly straightforward. It's obviously these sorts of things in our XML file, com hello world description. And also, if you remember on our when an admin sets up a new menu item, it's driven from this file here, this XML file, which is in our layout folder. And here you can see also some sorts of things which are translatable. And here within this field area, there are a couple of things which have got things to be translated. And if you actually go to the Joomla documentation page about standard form field types and click on one of these, for example, calendar, you can see which items are translatable where you can put in a term like this. So that's one area which is in the XML files, and the other area is obviously in our code where we've used JText and the underscore function, and we did a number of those last time in our admin default.php. Remember when we were outputting the grid, as it were? There's a number of items here which are translatable. Okay, so if we go back to our site and our admin side of things, where do we get things which are translatable? So obviously I've got the extensions here. Here's our com hello world. So its name is translatable, and the description now you get when you hover over it, the tooltip. Components. Here's another one which is translatable, and obviously when you go in there to edit the component, you've got these items which are translatable. And menus as well. If we went to set up a new menu item, we've got a choice of menu item type, and here we've got com hello world, and these sorts of things are translatable as well. And when we click on one of those, and we do get the next bit up, here's more stuff which is translatable. Now, if you think about that, sorts of things that are translatable in the admin side of things fall into two categories. One is the general sort of stuff. So, for example, when we look at extensions, there's a whole lot of different sorts of extensions, and some of these sorts of things need a certain amount of translation. These menu items need translation. Again, the menus, whenever you go in here to select a menu type, these sorts of things need translation, but they're all fairly general. They've all got, a selection of different types of components. But as well as that, you've also got the specific stuff. So whenever you go into components and you click on com hello world, this is specific to hello world. It's got nothing from other components. It's just really hello world here. So really, the way Joomla works is, because you've got those two different sorts of categories of translation needed, what they decide is, we'll split the admin translation files into two categories, and we'll lump together all of the general sort of stuff, the system stuff, into one category, and we'll put all the specific stuff into another. And that's really why you've got two files here. You've got a sys file for all the general sort of stuff, which you need across lots of components, and you've got one which is really just specific when you're editing, say, a particular component. So if I go to Helloworld, administrator, language, ENGB, and I do our properties of this, it comes up with 1.32 megabytes. So that is a lot of stuff to look through if we were to lump it all into one file, or into one category, I should say. So what happens is that we get a system file for each component and an ini file for each component. If you look through here, the system files are all fairly small, and it's the specific ones really which are the big ones. So this means that Joomla can just look for the general stuff. It just has to read the sys files, and it'll read those every time. And then it only needs to read the ini files if you're looking at this particular component or whatever, and that reduces significantly the amount of processing that Joomla has to do on a particular case, because remember, it has to do these in response to every HTTP request. If you're interested, these are just PHP ini files, so you can read a little bit about them on that page there. So let's start actually filling some of these in. Now I've actually decided to manage these via spreadsheets. There's just OpenOffice Calc, and I've got the terms here to be translated, and then I've got English in this column, French here, and Spanish, and this is really just a concatenation of, say, the English, the general and the English, or this is the general and the French, this A column and this C column, just to enable us to get them into a form that I can just do a copy and paste. So I can copy this and then find our English system file. Oops. And just do a paste there. And then I can do similar for one. And similar for the Spanish. Save all those. I'll create then the file. And I've already got a version 8, so I'm going to call this 8A. I'll go to our admin, extension manage, install. And install our version 8A. Now, when we look at things, we should hopefully see our Helloworld extension. I think it was page 8. Helloworld, yes. So we've got Helloworld. This is the Helloworld description. We look at our component there, it's Helloworld. And if we look, say, at our French menu, we'll look for our extensions here. And if I go here, this is bonjour. And go to here, Spanish, go to our extensions. And I call that hola. Now this is a little problem which I forgot about. One thing to remember actually whenever we're doing these is that the encoding needs to be UTF-8. And this giving problems here. Which is why you're getting on that site there this funny character, because it doesn't properly interpret it if it's set to ANSI encoding. So let's try this again. We'll go with French one here. With the French one also we didn't see the tooltip, and that's because here the tooltip has this Helloworld in Francais, and there's a funny accent there which clear all that off. Go back and copy our French one here. Make sure the encoding is right. Save that. Similarly with our Spanish one. We'll get rid of that. Right. And saved. So let's zip that up again. Call this 8. Now if we go to our Spanish site, this should hopefully be fixed. Hola. Hola. Yep, that's working okay. It's got that upside down question, exclamation mark at the start. Tooltip is okay. Notice there's the N above the tilde there. So that seems to be working okay, and French site should hopefully be working too. Okay, good. So you get the tooltip here, which didn't appear because there was that funny character, I see with cedilla in the Francais. Okay. However, whenever we go to bonjour here, this is still untranslated. So let's do that next. Let's go back to our spreadsheet, and on the admin side, goes over. This is our mini file. Now, it really doesn't need to be, should be okay generally, but you do get some accents on some characters in English, so it's always best to encode in UTF-8. French. Check. Whoops. Obviously need to set the encoding before we copy in. It's okay. And our Spanish side. Okay, so that should be okay now. Zip it all up again. And call this C. Extensions and install new version. Okay, so let's try the French one. And as you can see, the translated strings have come up here. If we go to our Spanish one and we go into the menus, let's try adding a new item to the Spanish menu. So you can see these are translated. This was done in the system. This is the general stuff. It's not the specifics to Helloworld stuff. However, this is the specific stuff to Helloworld. So that's all working okay now. The final thing we need to do then is just update our front end. So let's finally do that. And that's time. Change. So I'll go to here. Okay, that's all done. We'll go and zip up source code again. And we'll call this 8C. Oh. There already was an 8C. And finally we'll go. Okay, now when we go and try this again, it comes up with the translated message here. I click on English, your message. Okay, so that seems to be working. So hopefully that makes sense to you. There is one aspect that we haven't covered here, which is we haven't looked at the content inside our Helloworld database structure. We haven't looked at changing our messages themselves. So if you're obviously having a database record or database table with things which have strings in them, you need to think about how do you translate those. But really that would require different strategies based on really what you're trying to show. So it's really outside the scope of this tutorial. The other thing to mention is, as it mentioned on this page, there is another case which is about whenever you install a component, and there are specific language considerations there, but there's another step in the tutorial which is later on about adding an uninstall update script file, and that's when we'll look at that. It'll give me time to get my head around that. Okay, that's it. Hopefully you find that useful. Thanks for watching. Bye.